G'day and welcome back to RC Model Reviews. Today something really exciting, something different, something unusual. Here we go. What? Yes, it's a Nitro engine. It's a Nitro engine. The reason I'm putting this on the bench today is because on the weekend I put up a video of some Nitro plane action on my XJet channel, and a lot of people were quite excited by the fact that there was a Nitro plane, and I pointed out some of the downsides. Well, I visually showed you some of the downsides of using a Nitro engine, and really it helps explain why electric has become so popular. But I thought, hey, there's a lot of people out there now who have never used a Nitro engine. They've never bought a Nitro engine. They probably don't know an awful lot about Nitro engines. So here is a new in box OS55AX Nitro. Well, we call them glow engines. The Nitro came about because in countries like the USA, virtually all fuel for these engines contains a percentage of nitromethane. Now, in poorer countries like New Zealand and Australia and the UK, we used to run our engines on just a blend of methanol and oil. So we didn't use nitro unless we really had to, because it was so damn expensive and hard to get hold of. So we called these engines glow plug engines because they have a little glow plug in the head which helps ignite the fuel. And believe it or not, these are actually a form of diesel engines. So yeah, who'd have thought? Leading the world from behind. Right, I'm going to show you what's in the box. I don't do unboxings often, but in the case of a Nitro engine, you really got to see what we used to get for our money. I think this was about 100 and something US dollars when I bought it some years ago. But here you go. You get an instruction book. Look at that, OS55AX. These are a really good motor. Now, OS is a well-recognised name in the nitro engine market, in the internal combustion engine market. They produce some really high-quality motors, except for engines, except for a brief run when they brought out the OS46AX, which had real bad problems with peeling cylinder liners because they were using a new technology they didn't quite get right the first time. So that's when other companies like Thunder Tiger really stole a little bit of lead on them in places, because Thunder Tiger nailed that technology, so produced much better motors for the same or lower prices. Right, let's have a look. What do we get? We get a silencer or a muffler, depending on what part of the world you live in. This is what they call the P-box silencer or muffler. It's just an expansion chamber with one baffle in it. You can't really see through it, but the exhaust gases come in here and they swirl around there. They can expand, which takes a lot of the energy out of them. They pass through a baffle and then they come out this little hole. And you notice here there's a little thing. You can actually put a cable tie with a silicon extension on there, cable tie it on so that the oil is kept away as much as possible from your model, and it doesn't look like the one I showed people on the weekend. Right. This is just a block of foam. You don't use this. You don't put this in your model. It's got Chinese or Japanese writing on it. I don't know what it says. It probably says, do not eat. I'm not going to try. Here's what you really paid your money for, and this is the engine, the OS55AX engine. It's a two-stroke engine, and if I can get it out of the box, here we go. I think I'll pull in a bit on this so you can have a closer look. And there she is. Isn't that gorgeous? Isn't that beautiful? I mean, electric motors, they just don't have the same level of complexity and machining and finishing that these motors have. Now, you can see that's the exhaust port. If I turn the engine, you'll notice that the piston can be seen going up and down. Woohoo! Now that piston is an aluminium piston. It's not ringed. There's no ring in that piston. And the liner is made of brass, but it has a nickel coating on it, a nickel plating on it to provide very smooth surface. So there's very little friction. And the reason that the liner is made of brass and the piston is made of aluminium is because brass actually expands faster than aluminium. This is called an ABN. It's aluminium, brass, and nickel composite or construction, and so it means these are much less likely to seize if they accidentally run hot. But they do have what's called a pinch. If I try, I can't turn this right over because the bore inside here is actually slightly tapered. So as the piston moves up, it gets tighter and tighter until it won't move any further. And that's to provide maximum sealing. And because, as I say, the liner, which is brass, expands more quickly than the piston, whereas the engine warms up, the bore goes from being tapered to being parallel. It's very, very fine machining, fantastic sort of accuracy and precision required to produce these close fits, which is why these things cost so much more than electric motors, of course. Really good high quality, high pressure die casting here, which makes, why you pay the price. We've got a head here with lots of finning because there's stuff on fire in there. This is where the fuel combusts, so you've got to get rid of the excess heat. And so these fins conduct the heat away. On the front we have a carburetor, and these got increasingly complex as engines developed throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 20s. Look at that. It has a barrel in there. You can see the spray bar where the fuel is metered in there, and that's closed, that's open, voila. There's a low-speed needle valve somewhere. Here we go. That controls the low-speed mixture, and this controls the high-speed mixture. So you've got two needle valves to control the mixture. There's a bearing up here, there's another bearing in there, and it being a simple single-cylinder two-stroke, the only moving parts are the crankshaft, the bearing balls, and the piston and the conrod. Those are the only bits that move, so they're really not that complex. And here goes the glow plug, of course, which is used to assist in the combustion of the fuel, gets the fire started, so to speak, and the fuel line goes on this little nipple here. We have 4 mounting holes here for mounting on a beam, or beam mounts as they're called, because they come out, they can have normally there's like an adapter which has beam to radial adaptation, so you can mount it on a firewall. And your throttle servo connects up here. That's it. It's really not complicated at all. And it's a great way of turning a lot of methanol into a bit of power and a lot of heat, and a significant amount of noise as well. If you haven't seen a glow plug, here's one that comes with it. Won't take it out of the bag because I'll lose it, but it's just a little coil of platinum alloyed wire in there. Now, the way this works is pretty simple. If you expose platinum to methanol fumes, it gets hot. There's a kind of a catalytic reaction which causes the methanol to effectively burn, and the platinum catalyzes that. So by putting a platinum electrode or platinum filament in the top of the engine, as the piston comes up and compresses the methanol vapors, then the temperature of the methanol vapors rises, and when it reaches a certain point, that hot methanol then reacts with the platinum filament to create an even more heat, which then ignites the whole lot, right? Simple as. So that's how we start it. But we only need the glow plug powered up to a battery to get it started. If you put a battery on there, the glow plug glows, which is why it's called a glow plug, shock and horror, and that gets the motor started. Once the engine's running, then the heat of combustion plus that catalytic effect will enable combustion on every cycle. It's really quite simple. Now, because these are a two-stroke engine, the oil is carried in the fuel. We mix oil and methanol and nitromethane together in various proportions depending on what we're doing. Now, if you're using a relatively cheap, low-quality oil, like some of the synthetics that were first on the market, you need to run really 18 to 20% oil. And that's a lot compared to your lawnmower even, and most petrol engines. Most petrol engines will run 20 to 1, 40 to 1, and in the case of that, we're talking about less than 10% oil, obviously, down to 2% oil. Why do these need 10 times as much oil? Well, partly because methanol itself isn't a very good lubricant. Gasoline or petrol is not a bad lubricant. And of course, these engines only have plain bearings. What that means is there's no ball bearings on the bottom end of the conrod or on the top of the connecting rod. They just have a bush. And bushes need lots of oil. If we ran 2% oil in here, then the conrod would seize on the crankshaft and it would just stop very quickly. So you've got to run enough oil to keep the parts slippery inside. Castor oil used to be a big favourite for nitro motors. Fallen a bit from favour because it has many properties, but it is certainly not a clean oil. It doesn't burn, and that's a good thing, but it does mean that all the oil that goes in has to come out and you get the horrible slimy outside of your model. Also, castor oil is not very good in cold temperatures. It gets quite thick. And so if you're flying on a cold winter's day, it was not uncommon to go to wipe your model down and find that all the congealed castor oil on the outside was almost solid and really hard to wipe off. So we moved to synthetic oils. Problem with synthetic oils is that they don't lubricate quite as well. They are better at low temperatures, but at high temperatures they tend to burn. They actually tend to turn into a vapor, which means it's not uncommon if someone runs their engine too lean with a cheap synthetic oil, not only for the engine to overheat and possibly seize, but for virtually no oil coming out of the tailpipe or the exhaust of the motor. There'd be virtually no oil coming out of there because it's all burning in the motor. And if the oil burns, it can't lubricate. So I tend to run a high-tech synthetic oil. Actually, you can't get it now. It was Aerosave, which was a synthetic out of Germany, Fuchs, I think. Yeah, and I don't know if they even make it anymore, but I've still got some left. And that's great. I can run that down to, I run it about 14% on my 2-strokes and 12% on my 4-strokes. And that provides heaps of good protection while the engine's running. And more importantly, when the engine's not running, because the fuel we're using here is methanol, primarily methanol. Typically you run, let's say you're running old school, you might be running 20% oil, you might be running 10% nitromethane, and the balance, which is, work it out, 70%, is methanol. Now, the problem with methanol is it's hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture from the air. And the crankshaft in here is made of steel, and the bearings are made of steel, and the worst thing for steel is water. So if you run these things with just methanol and oil, and it's not a good oil, then they rust. You put them away, you come back later, oh, it's all rusty, the bearings feel all gritty and whatever. So your oil package has to have a really good anti-corrosion agent in it. Now, castor oil works reasonably well to a degree, but the really advanced synthetics like the Aerosave have a really good anti-corrosion package which prevents that happening when you've hung up your model. However, if you're going to hang a model up for any length of time, what you need to do is fill these up with a really good anti-corrosion agent. There's protective oils you can use. So again, extra work involved. With an electric, the end of the summer, you hang it up, you pull it down again at the start of the next summer. Easy peasy. These things, a lot of maintenance, a lot of work. You've got to make sure they're always flushed out before you hang them up, filled with good protective oil. And you've got to change the bearings now and then. These are quite big bearings, and these motors spin quite quickly, 15,000 RPM, and they're turning heavier props. So there's more load, more stress on the bearings, because also there is this power, this vibration. The piston, the fuel explodes, the piston goes down, the bearings have a huge amount of stress on them, then that freewheels around to the next compression stroke, and the load comes off the bearings. So yeah, the bearings take a hammering. I typically find running an engine hard, bearings won't last much more than a couple of years at best, even with the best oil and the best care and protection. I'm sure plenty of people will now be putting in the comments, I had one of these engines and I ran it for 300 years and it never needed new bearings. But I mean, I tend to run my engines very, very hard, so I expect the bearings not to last particularly long. Now, I've already touched on a couple of things that is bad about these, that the amount of oil they spit out and cover your model with, that's one of the disadvantages. The fact that fuel is now getting more expensive and harder to find, that's another disadvantage. But perhaps the biggest disadvantage to me of the internal combustion engine is vibration. These things vibrate like hell. Even the smoothest ones vibrate like hell. If you had an electric model that vibrated as much as a model with a nitro motor in it, you'd think there was something terribly wrong with it. And of course they must vibrate because it's not a smooth process. With the electric motor, you've got constant torque. You've got all those magnets. They're closely spaced, so the little torque pulses are very close together, and it makes for a very smooth operation. With this only has a torque pulse once every revolution. So for about 60 to 70 degrees of the crank stroke, you've got torque going to the propeller. All the rest of the time it's freewheeling. So if you look at it, when the engine fires, it wants to torque the other way, and then it'll come back, and then next revolution it'll torque again. So you're getting this constant rocking motion coming out of the motor, and that is what causes the vibration. It's not so much the piston going up and down, it's actually the torque pulses that make the model vibrate. So that means you've got to wrap your receiver in foam. You've got to make sure all your wiring is not going to be flexing and vibrating or moving under the vibration. You've got to make sure your linkages are super double tight. And so it really does add a whole new dimension to pre-flighting your model, because with vibration, things just fall apart. They really, really do. So you need to know that if you're running an internal combustion engine, you've done all your homework. And as I say, the receiver, the electronics must be protected from that vibration. Otherwise, the components will fall off the board. It happens very often, and it used to happen in the old days. Wires would break and things, and you do all sorts of problems. So vibration is the real killer. It's like having a really unbalanced prop on an electric model. And the other thing, of course, is noise. These mufflers produce, knock the noise down quite a bit, but it's not even the amplitude of the noise. It's just that some people find it very irritating. They just don't like the noise, especially members of the public, who are quite happy to mow their lawns on a Sunday morning and annoy you. But if you were to fly a model aircraft with an earshot, they'd soon bitch and moan if it was a nitro model. Perhaps the only thing more annoying is a pusher wing with the loud buzz you get from those things. But so the noise was an issue. These are the things that helped kill, or have helped severely reduce the amount of nitro model or engine use in the hobby. But it's not dead, it's still there. We still fly nitro. Lots of people still fly nitro. It's just that you won't see them in the parks for obvious reasons. Now, the next most obvious question I know people are going to be asking is, what's the equivalent electric motor to that? I mean, in terms of power. Well, these things here I think are rated at about 1.4 PS, which is, about 1.5, let's say 1.5 horsepower. And we know there are 746 watts, I can't remember, 740 something watts in a horsepower. So really, we're looking at about 1100 watts, 1200 watts. That's the equivalent of that setup there. And you might say, whoa, that's pretty good. But let's see how it compares to an electric setup. I don't have a 1200 watt electric setup here, but I'm going to measure the weight of this engine, because obviously weight is one of the key factors. Okay, let's go. We'll put the engine itself on, and it weighs 404 grams. So it's no lightweight. Let's put the muffler on, or the silencer on as well. Brings it up to 516 grams. Now there's a whole lot of auxiliary bits and pieces. There's nuts and bolts, and there's a throttle servo. And you've got a fuel tank, and the fuel tank itself can carry sometimes up to 8 ounces of fuel for a model this size. So you're looking at quite a hefty package, and it would, I think you'd probably find that its power to weight ratio is not as good, perhaps, as modern electrics. Of course, modern electrics won't get the same endurance unless you're using a really big battery, which pushes the weight right up. But for normal sport models, these things are probably roughly equivalent to, in terms of weight and power, to a 1200 watt electric setup with maybe a 4S battery. I don't know, what would it be, say 4,000 milliamps? I'm just guessing here, so someone will correct me, I'm sure. I don't have the equivalent electric setup, as I say. Now, it's spring here, it's build season, so I've got quite a few Nitro models, ARFs out the back, which I want to get going this year. So I just want to know who's interested in following a build with this motor or a motor very similar to it, and an ARF, and installing the radio gear, setting it all up, showing you what is different in a Nitro versus electric setup, and then just showing you what's involved in mixing up the fuel, starting a Nitro motor, tuning a Nitro motor, and flying a Nitro equipped model, because there are some quite significant differences that people who have never been involved in Nitro won't know about. And some of it's really good. Some of it is actually really nice. Flying Nitro, you can see why people get Nitro planes and they love them. And I love my Nitro planes. I love my electric planes too, but they're different in quite peculiar ways, and I hope I could share that with you. So if you're interested, let me know, and I'll do that as a series of videos over the next month or two. There you go. Thanks for watching. Comments, questions in the usual place. What I have decided to do, and again, let me know if this is a good idea. If you ask questions on this video, I will do a follow-up video where I address those questions in a video. So I will talk to them, and if necessary, I can show you diagrams and pictures and pull stuff apart if you want. So if you've got any questions, put them in the section provided by YouTube on this video, and I will do a video answering them. I'll also drop a comment on the video itself. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.